At 67, Arnold Schwarzenegger stands as one of the most recognizable figures on the planet. From conquering bodybuilding stages to ruling the box office as the ultimate action hero, and even climbing the political ladder to become governor of California, his life reads like a script no Hollywood writer could invent. But behind the muscles, the movie stardom, and the political spotlight, Arnold carried grudges, deep ones. For decades, whispers in Hollywood and headlines in tabloids have hinted at rivalries, betrayals, and enemies that cut deeper than any on-screen battle. Arnold wasn't just a man chasing success. He was a competitor who believed in domination, whether on stage, on set, or in politics. And along that path, he made allies who lifted him up, but also enemies he would never forgive. Some were fellow actors who saw him as a threat. Some were directors who underestimated him, and others were powerful political rivals who clashed with his ambitions. Tonight, we reveal the 5 people Arnold Schwarzenegger openly admitted or strongly hinted he hates the most. And trust me, the names on this list will shock you. Because when the Terminator points to someone as his enemy, it's not a role, it's real. Number 5. James Cameron. When people think of Arnold Schwarzenegger's rise to cinematic immortality, the name James Cameron is never far behind. After all, it was Cameron who cast Arnold as the unstoppable cyborg in The Terminator, a role that defined his career. But what many fans don't know is that behind the scenes, the partnership wasn't always smooth. By the mid-90s, tensions began to surface. Cameron was a perfectionist, notorious for pushing actors to their physical and mental limits, and Arnold, accustomed to being in control, clashed with him more than once. The biggest rift came during the filming of True Lies. Arnold believed that Cameron gave too much attention to co-star Jamie Lee Curtis, overshadowing him in a film that was supposed to be his showcase. Rumors swirled that heated arguments broke out on set, with Arnold accusing Cameron of forgetting who the star really island. To make matters worse, Arnold wanted a sequel to True Lies, but Cameron wasn't interested, preferring to chase passion projects like Titanic and Avatar. Arnold felt abandoned, convinced that Cameron had turned his back on the partnership that made them both legends. Though both men have spoken respectfully about each other in public, those close to Arnold insist he never forgave Cameron for sidelining him and for treating him as just another actor, rather than the superstar he believed himself to be. For Arnold, James Cameron was not just a director, he was a reminder that even the Terminator could be controlled by someone else. Number 4. Gray Davis. Arnold Schwarzenegger's Hollywood rivals were one thing, but his foray into politics brought an entirely new battlefield. When he announced his run for governor of California in 2003, few took him seriously at first. But Arnold wasn't just a celebrity candidate, he was a juggernaut who swept aside expectations. And the man who felt the full force of that storm was Governor Gray Davis. Davis had been struggling with a collapsing energy market, accusations of corruption, and a wave of public dissatisfaction. Into that chaos stepped Arnold, framing himself as the outsider who would terminate political dysfunction. The recall election was brutal, filled with personal attacks, accusations, and tabloid-fueled scandals. Davis reportedly saw Arnold not as a challenger, but as an insult, a Hollywood actor exploiting California's crisis to catapult himself into power. But Arnold fought back harder, often mocking Davis publicly and accusing him of running the state into the ground. Their exchanges became bitter, almost personal. When Arnold won in a landslide, Davis faded from the spotlight. His career effectively ended. For Arnold, Davis wasn't just a rival, he was the political obstacle that had to be crushed. And Arnold did just that. Even years later, those close to him say the animosity lingered. Arnold didn't just dislike Davis. He hated him for underestimating his seriousness and for standing in the way of his new identity as a political heavyweight. For the Terminator, Gray Davis was the embodiment of an old order he had to destroy, and destroy him he did. Number 3. Sylvester Stallone. Few rivalries in Hollywood history burned as hot or as publicly as the one between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. In the 1980s and 90s, they were the twin titans of the action movie era. Stallone had Rocky and Rambo, while Arnold dominated with The Terminator and Predator. But what looked like healthy competition on the outside was, in truth, an all-out war. The feud started with ego. Stallone reportedly mocked Arnold's accent and acting skills, while Arnold ridiculed Stallone's failed comedies and his reliance on sequels. Things escalated when tabloids fueled stories of on-set pranks, bitter interviews, and even sabotage. One of the most infamous incidents came when Arnold supposedly tricked Stallone into starring in Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot, a film so critically panned that Stallone later called it the worst movie in the galaxy. Arnold had publicly pretended he wanted the role, leading Stallone to grab it out of spite, only to regret it for decades. Behind the scenes, both men demanded to be the highest-paid star, the one with the biggest guns, the bloodiest kill counts, and the most outrageous stunts. Producers often played them against each other, but the rivalry turned personal. They genuinely hated one another, to the point where industry insiders say it was impossible to invite them to the same event without expecting fireworks. It wasn't until the 2000s, long after their box office dominance had waned, that they buried the hatchet and even co-starred in The Expendables. But make no mistake, for decades, Arnold saw Stallone not just as a rival, but as an enemy. And during the height of their careers, that hate was as real as the bullets flying on screen. Number 2. Bruce Willis. In the pantheon of action heroes, Bruce Willis and Arnold Schwarzenegger seemed destined to clash. Willis, with his wisecracking everyman persona in Die Hard, was the polar opposite of Arnold's muscle-bound superhuman. But their rivalry went far beyond style. It became personal, bitter, and at times, explosive. The tension boiled over in the 2000s, centered around the creation of the Expendables franchise. Arnold was initially brought in for cameos, while Willis had a bigger role. But as the sequels gained momentum, negotiations for the Expendables 3 collapsed in dramatic fashion. Willis demanded a staggering $4 million for just 4 days of work. Producer Sylvester Stallone, ironically now reconciled with Arnold, blew up publicly, calling Willis greedy and lazy on Twitter. Behind the scenes, Arnold sided firmly with Stallone, feeling Willis had disrespected both the franchise and the legacy of the genre they built together. But the grudge went back further. Arnold had long resented how Willis mocked his accent and caricatured him in interviews, while Arnold often joked that Willis was just a television actor who got lucky. What started as playful digs escalated into open hostility. By the time the Expendables drama unfolded, the relationship was beyond repair. For Arnold, Bruce Willis wasn't just another rival, he was a symbol of arrogance, a man who thought he could outshine the Terminator in the very arena Arnold helped create. Their feud became one of the last great action star wars of Hollywood, and even today, whispers suggest Arnold never forgave Willis for putting money before brotherhood. Number 1. Donald Trump. When Arnold Schwarzenegger stepped into the world of television after politics, he took over as host of The Celebrity Apprentice. The move seemed like a perfect fit, one icon replacing another. But for Donald Trump, the former host and future president, it was personal. Trump mocked Arnold from the very beginning, publicly ridiculing him on Twitter and in interviews, calling his ratings a total disaster, and insisting that Arnold was a failure. Arnold, never one to back down, fired back with icy precision. He reminded the world that leadership was more than television ratings, and openly criticized Trump's presidency, calling him a failed leader who lacked vision and integrity. Their feud escalated beyond Hollywood gossip. It became a cultural battle between two titans of ego. For Arnold, Trump represented everything he despised: arrogance without accountability, power without responsibility. The attacks weren't just professional jabs, they were deeply personal. Arnold felt humiliated, turned into a punchline by someone he considered beneath him in talent and discipline. In interviews, he admitted that Trump's obsession with him was sad, but those close to Arnold say the bitterness runs deeper. The clash between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Donald Trump wasn't just about television ratings, it was about legacy, dominance, and pride. And that's why Trump claims the #1 spot, because for the Terminator, no rival actor or political foe stirred his hate quite like the man who tried to turn him into a national joke. Arnold Schwarzenegger's life has always been larger than life, an immigrant who conquered bodybuilding, Hollywood, and even American politics. But along the way, He collected enemies as fierce as any villain he faced on screen. From directors who pushed him aside, to rivals who fought him at the box office, to political foes who tried to block his rise, and finally to Donald Trump, a clash so loud it spilled across headlines around the world. What this list reveals is simple. Behind the charisma and the famous one-liners, Arnold is a man who never forgets a slight. His grudges are as legendary as his victories. And even though time has softened some rivalries, others remain scars that refuse to heal. But what do you think? Were you surprised by the names on this list? Which rivalry do you believe defined Arnold's career the most? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your take. And if you enjoyed diving into the hidden battles of Hollywood's biggest stars, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you never miss another story from the golden age of fame and scandal. Because in Hollywood, the spotlight doesn't just create legends, it also reveals their darkest enemies.